Suggestions for the next book? Let me have them. I look forward to hearing. Meanwhile, East of Eden, chapter 34. A child may ask, what is the world's story about? And a grown man or woman may wonder, what way will the world go? How does it end? And while we're at it, what's the story about? I believe that there is one story in the world, and only one, that has frightened and inspired us so that we live in a pearl-white cereal of continuing thought and wonder. Humans are caught in their lives, in their thoughts, in their hungers and ambitions, in their avarice and cruelty, and in their kindness and generosity too, in a net of good and evil. I think this is the only story we have, and that it occurs on all levels of feeling and intelligence. Virtue and vice are warp and woof of our first consciousness, and they'll be the fabric of our last. And this despite any changes we may impose on field and river and mountain, on economy and manners. There's no other story. A man, after he's brushed off the dust and chips of his life, will have left only the hard, clean questions. Was it good or was it evil? Have I done well or ill? Herodotus of the Persian War tells a story of how Croesus, the richest and most favoured king of his time, asked Solon the Athenian a leading question. He would not have asked it if he had not been worried about the answer. Who, he asked, is the luckiest person in the world? He must have been eaten with doubt and hungry for reassurance. Solon told him of 3 lucky people in old times, and Croesus more than likely did not listen, so anxious was he about himself. And when Solon did not mention him, Croesus was forced to say, "Do you not consider me lucky?" Solon did not hesitate in his answer. "How can I tell?" he said. "You aren't dead yet." And this answer must have haunted Croesus dismally as his luck disappeared, and his wealth and his kingdom. And as he was being burned on a tall fire, he may have thought of it, and perhaps wished he had not asked, or not been answered. And in our time, when a man dies, if he's had wealth and influence and power and all the vestments that arouse envy, and after the living takes stock of the dead man's property and his eminence and works and monuments, the question is still there. Was his life good or was it evil? Which is another way of putting Croesus's question. Envies are gone, and the measuring stick is, was he loved or was he hated? Is his death felt as a loss, or does a kind of joy come of it? I remember clearly the deaths of 3 men. One was the richest man of the century, who, having clawed his way to wealth through the souls and bodies of men, spent many years trying to buy back the love he had forfeited, and by that process performed great service to the world, and perhaps had much more than balanced the evils of his rise. I was on a ship when he died. The news was posted on the bulletin board, and nearly everyone received the news with pleasure. Several said, "Thank God that son of a bitch is dead." Then there was a man, smart as Satan, who, lacking some perception of human dignity and knowing all too well every aspect of human weakness and wickedness, used his special knowledge to warp men, to buy men, to bribe and threaten and seduce, until he found himself in a position of great power. He clothed his motives in the names of virtue, and I have wondered whether he ever knew that no gift will ever buy back a man's love when you've removed his self-love. A bribed man can only hate his briber. When this man died, the nation rang with praise, and just beneath, with gladness that he was dead. There was a 3rd man who perhaps made many errors in performance, but whose effective life was devoted to making men brave and dignified and good in a time when they were poor and frightened, and when ugly forces were loose in the world to utilize their fears. This man was hated by the few. When he died, The people burst into tears in the streets, and their minds wailed, "What can we do now? How can we go on without him?" In uncertainty, I'm certain that underneath their topmost layers of frailty, men want to be good and want to be loved. Indeed, most of their vices are attempted shortcuts to love. When a man comes to die, no matter what his talents and influence and genius, if he dies unloved, his life must be a failure to him, and his dying a cold horror. It seems to me that if you or I must choose between two courses of thought or action, we should remember our dying and try so to live that our death brings no pleasure to the world. We have only one story. All novels, all poetry are built on the never-ending contest in ourselves of good and evil, and it occurs to me that evil must constantly respawn, while virtue, is immortal. Vice has always a new, fresh young face, while virtue is venerable as nothing else in the world is. Chapter 35. Lee helped Adam and the two boys move to Selinus, which is to say he did it all, packed the things to be taken, saw them on the train, loaded the back seat of the Ford, and arriving in Selinus, unpacked, and saw the family settled in Dess's little house. When he had done everything he could think of to make them comfortable, and a number of things unnecessary, and more things for the sake of delay, he waited on Adam formally one evening after the twins had gone to bed. Perhaps Adam caught his intention from Lee's coldness and formality. Adam said, "All right, I've been expecting it, tell me." And that broke up Lee's memorized speech, which he had intended to begin, "For a number of years I have served you to the best of my ability, and now I feel—" "I put it off as long as I could," said Lee. "I have a speech already. Do you want to hear it?" "Or do you want to say it?" "No," said Lee, "I don't. And it's a pretty good speech too." "When do you want to go?" Adam asked. "As soon as possible. I'm afraid I might lose my intention if I don't go soon. Do you want me to wait until you get someone else?" "Oh, better not," said Adam. "You know how slow I am. It might be some time. I might never get round to it." "I'll go tomorrow then." "It'll tear the boys to pieces," Adam said. "I don't know what they'll do." "Maybe you'd better sneak off and let me tell them afterward." "It's my observation that children always surprise us," said Lee. And so it was. At breakfast the next morning, Adam said, "Boys, Lee is going away." "Is he?" said Cal. "There's a basketball game tonight. Cost 10 cents. Can we go?" "Yes, but did you hear what I said?" "Sure," said Aaron. "You said Lee's going away." "But he's not coming back." Cal asked, "Where's he going?" "Oh, to San Francisco to live." "Oh," said Aaron. "There's a man on Main Street, right on the street, and he's got a little stove, and he cooks sausages, and he puts them in buns. They cost a nickel. You can take all the mustard you want." Lee stood in the kitchen door, smiling at Adam. When the twins got their books together, Lee said, "Goodbye, boys." They shouted, "Goodbye," and tumbled out of the house. Adam stared into his coffee cup and said in apology, "What little brutes. I guess that's your reward for over 10 years of service." "I like it better that way," Lee said. "If they pretended sorrow, they'd be liars. It doesn't mean anything to them. Maybe they'll think of me sometimes, privately. I don't want them to be sad. I hope I'm not so small-souled as to take satisfaction in being missed." He laid 50 cents on the table in front of Adam. "And when they start for the basketball game tonight, give them this from me. Tell them to buy the sausage buns. My farewell gift may be ptomaine, for all I know." Adam looked at the telescope basket Lee brought in the dining room. "Is that all your stuff, Lee?" "Everything but my books. They're in boxes in the cellar. If you don't mind, I'll send for them, or come for them after I get settled." "Why, sure. I'm going to miss you, Lee, whether you want me to or not. Are you really going to get your bookstore?" Well, that is my intention. You'll let us hear from you? I don't know. I'll have to think about it. They say a clean cut heals soonest. There's nothing sadder to me than associations held together by nothing but the glue of postage stamps. If you can't see or hear or touch a man, it's best to let him go. Adam stood up from the table. I'll walk to the depot with you. No, said Lee sharply. No, I don't want that. Goodbye, Mr. Trask. Goodbye, Adam. He went out of the house so fast that Adam's goodbye reached him at the bottom of the front steps, and Adam's "Don't forget to write" sounded over the click of the front gate. That night, after the basketball game, Cal and Aaron each had 5 sausages on buns, and it was just as well, for Adam had forgotten to provide any supper. Walking home, the twins discussed Lee for the first time. I wonder why he went away, Cal asked. He's talked about going before. What do you suppose he'll do without us? I don't know. I bet he comes back, Aaron said. How do you mean? Father said he was going to start a bookstore. That's funny. A Chinese bookstore. He'll come back, said Aaron. He'll get lonesome for us. You'll see. Bet you 10 cents he doesn't. Before when? Before forever. That's a bet, said Aaron. Aaron was not able to collect his winnings for nearly a month, but he won 6 days later. Lee came in on the 10:40 and let himself in with his own key. There was a light in the dining room, but Lee found Adam in the kitchen, scraping at a thick black crust in the frying pan with the point of a can opener. Lee put down his basket. If you soak it overnight, it will come right out. Will it? I burned everything I've cooked. There's a saucepan of beets out in the yard. Smelled so bad I couldn't have them in the house. Burned beets are awful. Lee! He cried, and then, is anything the matter? Lee took the black iron pan from him and put it in the sink and ran water in. If we had a new gas stove, we could make a cup of coffee in a few minutes, he said. I might as well build up the fire. Stove won't burn, said Adam. Lee lifted a lid. Have you ever taken the ashes out? Ashes? Oh, go in the other room, said Lee. I'll make some coffee. Adam waited impatiently in the dining room, but he obeyed his orders. At last, Lee brought in 2 cups of coffee, set them on the table. Made it in a skillet, he said, much faster. He leaned over his telescope basket and untied the rope that held it shut. He brought out the stone bottle. Chinese absinthe, he said. Capi! May last 10 more years. I forgot to ask whether you had replaced me. You're beating around the bush, said Adam. I know it. I also know the best way would be just to tell it and get it over with. You lost your money in a Fantan game. No, I wish that was it. No, I have my money. Oh, this damn cork's broken. I'll have to shove it in the bottle. He poured the black liquor into his coffee. I never drank it this way, he said. Say, it's good. Tastes like rotten apples, said Adam. Yes, but remember Sam Hamilton said like good rotten apples. Adam said, when do you think you'll get around to telling me what happened to you? Nothing happened to me, said Lee. I got lonesome. That's all. Isn't that enough? How about your bookstore? I don't want a bookstore. I think I knew it before I got on the train, but I took all this time to make sure. Then there's your last dream gone. Good riddance. Lee seemed on the verge of hysteria. Missy Clask, Chinese boy, sing gunked and lunk. Adam was alarmed. What's the matter with you anyway? Lee lifted the bottle to his lips, took a deep hot drink and panted the fumes out of his burning throat. Adam, he said, I am incomparably, incredibly, overwhelmingly glad to be home. I have never been so goddamn lonesome in my life.